All right. Greetings and welcome to Are You Well? Today we are talking about nutrition, eating your way to wellness, partnering well-being and nutrition. And so my name is Judy Fredericks. I'm your wellness liaison here at the Wellness Center. And my co-presenter is Molly. Will you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Molly DePringer. I'm one of the dietitians who works in the bariatric surgery department, preparing folks for bariatric surgery, and I also work in medical weight loss.
Thank you. So each month during the school year, we come to you with a different topic around wellness. And hopefully, each time you join us, you pick up a few tips that will bring you closer to what your definition of wellness is. So today, like I mentioned, we're talking about nutrition and about eating your way to wellness to see if there's things you can pick up from this talk that you can put in place today, tomorrow, planning ahead. Then in February, we'll talk about perfectionism. March, we'll talk about sleep, and on through May. I hope that you'll be able to join us. If you can't join us, or if there's some things that you would like to review that we've talked about, all of these talks are recorded on the wellness website, so you're able to always go back and take a look at them. And we'd enjoy having you back there. All right. So, just the way we start all the time is just to have a grounding exercise. You've been busy all day. You have now given yourself 1 hour of wellness that you're allowing yourself to have this little timeout for you. And so, we want to talk about the power of that kind of kindness for yourself. So, if you would sit back in your chair, put your feet flat on the floor, roll your shoulders so that you engage your shoulder blades a little bit different, a little bit deeper of a roll so that those shoulders come down. And take 3 deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. 3 deep breaths can change your neural pathway. It can actually bring down your cortisol, which is a really good thing, especially when you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, nervous about something. Those 3 deep breaths are really critical. When you add that to green gray, being able to look out the window, look at a picture like on your screen, something in your office or your workspace, and have that green gray. Green gray, again, is the calmest color to your brain, and it will actually bring down that cortisol as well. So you've got those two things working for you. So remember to do that when you're feeling a little bit stressed, and that might kind of help a little bit. All right, so we want to settle in a little bit. If you can, close your eyes or lower them to the ground and just listen to my voice. Think of a person who's been kind to you. Could be a grandparent, a teacher, a partner, a friend, even a beloved pet. Allow yourself to feel the kindness and warmth. Imagine this person, this being, gazing at you with understanding, kindness, and compassion. Imagine this person is wishing you well, sending you a blessing, possibly saying these words: May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy. May you be held in kindness and compassion. Sit with that for just a moment, thinking about who you called up to sit in front of you. Hopefully, even just thinking about that makes you smile a little bit. Take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth, and then stretch. So hands out in front of you so you round out your back. Hands over your head, grab one wrist and pull to the side. Grab the other wrist, pull to the other side. Put your hands behind your back, opening up that chest so you're not like a shrimp at the end of the day, right? A deep breath, and then literally shake it out. All right, you should be ready to go. So today what we want to do is take a look at some of the objectives that we're hoping to touch on. We want to think about healthy eating patterns. What is it about how you eat now and how could you shift that just a little bit to make it a little more healthy? Thinking about different types of nutritious and affordable snacks, and talking about nutrition and how it contributes to overall health and your focused academic performance. It really does change how you process thoughts. So this might be really good for most of you that have connected with us. Now, one of the things I'd like you to do is go ahead and use your phone and name the challenge you have around healthy eating. So go ahead and type that in. And if it's not seeming to work, please put it in the chat. Just as many things as you can think about that challenges you around healthy eating. All right, first person, portion control, absolutely. Healthier foods cost more, all right? So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So thank you to both of you for adding those in there. Time, yes, yeah, just how much time do you have? And if you haven't prepared ahead of time and you're hungry now, that's definitely a challenge. Yes. And we're seeing more and more about the expense. Sweets, yes, kind of the need for sweets or salt. That actually tells you a little bit about what your body needs when you crave one of those. Yes, unplanned eating. Yeah, that's a nice way to say that. I know a lot of people fall into that. I certainly do. Yes, a lot of times you eat while you're socializing, if there's peer pressure around how you're eating or what you're eating, definitely then stress, yes, and the convenience. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and go on to the second question. I want you to tell me what you think about when you hear the word diet. In any context, when you hear that, what happens in your body? What happens in your mind? What are you thinking about? Both of you said the same thing at the same time. That's great. Yep, yep. The bigger the font, the more people are saying the same thing. Right. All right. Negative. Yes. Hungry. Hungry. If you're on a diet, you're going to be hungry, right? Cardboard, like tasteless. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. All right. And so that you're not feeling alone, here's some of the things that other people have said. Oh, if there's one more person typing, I'll wait till you get done typing. But it's just interesting how much feeling or emotion that one word brings up. All right, so as you can see, the same types of things, that same theme around this, the idea about having to restrain yourself or deny yourself or starve or it won't work, just kind of that negative thing. So we're going to try to challenge that just a little bit. And if you think about it, change is an opportunity to do something amazing. So maybe, just maybe, we can do that today, okay? All right. So let's go ahead, Molly, go ahead and jump in there and talk about making a change.
Both of these words came up, right, in our kind of in our brainstorming when we're thinking about dieting, when we're thinking about some of the stresses that come with attempting healthy eating. So what we're trying to kind of break free from are maybe some of these restrictive definitions here. When we think about dieting as like this cycle of restriction, avoiding these high reward foods, even skipping meals in an effort to reduce calories, oftentimes the effect is more hunger, the cycle of overeating, and then because things are happening that are so unplanned, our blood sugars become more unstable, our appetites become more unpredictable. We're eating in ways that, weren't necessarily part of our planned routine. A lot of times months after starting a diet, we experience weight gain because of the inconsistencies that come with trying to restrict to such an extent. So I want to speak to, before we kind of get into our topic tonight of like what kinds of patterns might be appropriate, how do we break that cycle of restriction, how can we include all types of foods and still eat in a way that makes you feel really great. I want to kind of make sure that everyone's on the same page just in terms of some food basics. So I think a lot of people have probably heard like influencers or even just like people in health describing macros or tracking their macros. All this is referring to is the macronutrients or the sort of the building blocks of food. So carbohydrates, protein, and fats. These are the three different types of large nutrients that make up our food supply. You can see grains, fruits, and vegetables fall into the carbohydrate category. Combination protein and carbohydrate include things like beans and legumes. Straight protein would be things like meat, fish, seafood, and eggs. And then kind of a fat combo with fattier fish, higher fat meats, some dairy foods. Overlapping with fat, which we can see here would be things like heavy cream, coconut milk, coconut oil, peanuts, other types of nuts, avocado, oil, butter, olives, those kinds of things. So I might have you slide back one, Judy, just to speak to the effect that these foods have on our blood sugar and on our insulin. So this graph actually does a really pretty nice job of describing our blood sugar response to different foods. You can see though it's also describing insulin. When we eat carbohydrate foods by themselves, it tends to have a pretty large spike and a fairly quick fall. With protein, it's much less pronounced, probably even less so than this graph is describing. It's a very little blood sugar spike when we eat exclusive protein foods. And it doesn't happen commonly just because usually we eat fat with other foods, but if you were to eat a stick of butter or drink an ounce of olive oil, your blood sugar would typically remain completely flat. So it's useful to be aware of how our body responds to each of these individual macronutrients.
All right, so if we can flip the switch just a little bit and think about the definitions a little bit differently. So, what if you thought about diet as your habitual nourishment? Because that's actually the definition of it. It's the food and drink you regularly consume. There's no emotion tied to this, no good or bad, the way that we have interpreted it over the years. When you think about meal planning, you think about something that you would need to think ahead. Consider what types of nutrition and portions that you're going to use for meal planning. It does reduce waste, it does save money, it is efficient, and you actually feel confident when you do your meal planning because you have something there that's already prepared and you're able to grab and go. That's wonderful. Mindful eating is eating slowly and actually practicing awareness of your physical hunger cues. And that's a really important thing. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But the idea of being aware of the signals that your body is giving you, most of the time we're rushing around, we're too busy, we deny ourselves what our body is saying, and we go ahead and eat or starve, one or the other, without noticing what our body's saying. So you want to be able to strive for some balance, you want to have variety, and in your food you want to have contrast, color, eye appeal, because it'll make it a little bit easier for you to go ahead and eat those foods. Right. So there's some different diet plans or patterns that we want to talk about. And this has been in the news for many years and it's just good to know about. One of the ones that's really easy to know about is the My Healthy Plate or My Plate. You can look it up. Usually this is in the schools because it's just a very simple, colorful way to look at it. If you look at the size of the plate, that's really kind of interesting. Think about your dinner plates. Are they more than 10 inches? And so sometimes just the visual of a smaller plate being fuller is a little bit easier for you to stop eating at a certain point. This is one of the more common food plans, and you can see how the vegetables take up quite a bit of the plate. You've got the healthy proteins, the grains, and the fruits, and then the water that you're going to drink to go along with that. The next one is the Mediterranean diet. This is the pyramid. With the Mediterranean diet, the focus is on the social part of this, like every day, get out, do something, be with somebody. So have that social component. And then it talks about 5 fruits and vegetables per day. So think about your day today. And if you still have the opportunity to have one more meal, think about what you would add to get to that point. or 3 servings of dairy, or a little bit of that whole grain, be able to have that. So you look kind of the way this pattern goes. And again, every day you want to be able to include that water in there. That's so important. If you're a person that drinks a lot of pop, maybe in between each Diet Coke, you may want to drink a glass of water. That might be one way to get the water in, spread out the caffeine and the different contents of the pop, so that you do get some healthy water in there. Now, the with the Mediterranean diet, oh, I think I went too far. Nope.
Or I
Yep. So with
paired it to show an example of it. Yeah,
yeah, do
kind
you
of
want to
flip
take,
it.
you want to do this?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So we were trying to give like some practical applications of each of these different diet patterns. So an example of a recipe that would be appropriate, like that what might describe the Mediterranean diet, you can see here quinoa, which is a whole grain, lots and lots of vegetables. It's really the base of the kind of the Mediterranean diet pyramid. A quarter cup of feta, a small amount because it's not, like a staple on this routine. Olive oil absolutely is though, so you can see a nice homemade dressing, and then adding additional chickpeas, which again fall in the base of that category. One of the tenets of the Mediterranean diet is that many meals do not revolve around meat in a way it would kind of in a more standard American diet. So just to provide an example of like the Mediterranean diet kind of in action.
Thanks. And then the Mind Diet. What's really interesting about the Mind Diet is it is a combination of the Mediterranean and the DASH diet. And it really has a focus on brain health. If you look at all the things that are really focused on, it does have lower levels of oxidative stress and inflammation, which is really wonderful. It's a hybrid of Mediterranean DASH diets, and research has shown that the Mind Diet does slow down cognitive decline and adds more flavonoids to your day, to your meal. This is the 7th straight year it's been recognized by US News and the 3rd best plant-based diet, 4th best overall meal plan. So that's saying something. It is realistic for sustainable lifestyles, and the epidemiologist Dr. Martha Claire Morris and her colleagues here at Rush, along with Harvard, developed this plan showing a correlation between food, nutrient, and brain function, which is really good. So, looking a little bit more at the Mind Diet, you want to see that it talks a lot about berries, those antioxidants, so important. Think about all the brain function stuff here. Green leafy vegetables, nuts, 5 or more servings in a week. Olive oil as your main cooking oil, right? Whole grains, brown rice, fish, beans, poultry, wine, definitely. And so it's easy visually to take a look at it to see what you can focus on and what you can maybe back off on a little bit. So the ideas that you want to work with around the Mind Diet, there's a little example of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So for example, for breakfast, scrambled eggs with olive oil instead of butter or milk. Try it with olive oil, and they actually are fluffier. Just a little bit, they are fluffier. Add in that spinach, red pepper, whatever you have in the refrigerator from your salad the night before. You can toss it in with that. Lunch ideas, have the green salad with chicken, especially if you have leftover chicken. It's always great to be able to throw that in there. Chickpeas for a little extra protein, your strawberries, and your olive oil. Then your dinner ideas, if you want pasta, try whole wheat pasta. See what you think about that. The other ideas for snacking is just 2 tablespoons of some type of nut butter on whole wheat cracker, or a smoothie, or hummus. I really enjoy those little hummus. I think maybe there's 2 tablespoons of hummus in there, and with whatever vegetables I have in the refrigerator, just to take that with. It's a great snack, kind of pick me up if I'm hungry in the middle of the day and not quite ready to sit down to eat. All right, Molly.
We, of course, wanted to speak to the updated dietary guidelines as well, just because they've been in the news so recently. And they do describe a type of eating pattern. So this is sort of like a summarized version of what some of the guidelines do provide. And I just am aware that they're politicized in a way that I don't know that we always view the dietary guidelines to be, but because they inform quite a bit of, like, they'll inform the school lunch policy, they will inform the meal standards for the military. They are absolutely relevant for us to kind of be aware of them. So this is sort of a summary of what the bigger takeaways, I suppose, of the dietary guidelines are, and you can see a lot of them seem to be quite sensible. And we haven't used the pyramid depiction quite as recently, just because I don't know how well it matches like how people are actually plating their meals. I think that was the intent behind um, providing a visual of a plate that, has been sort of like the replacement for the pyramid for the past like 15 years or so. But you can see here really a significant emphasis on animal protein, on vegetables, even more of an emphasis than fruit, incorporating healthy fats with sort of a new definition of what that would be. Continued focus on whole grains, and then a real emphasis, and this is a continued emphasis on limiting like ultra processed foods, added sugars, and refined carbohydrates. One thing I think that's quite interesting, I'll have you advance to the next slide, Judy. So there are, various takeaways. I put the takeaway of like the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, so sort of like our guiding institutions, like goods and bads of the depiction. What's really interesting is that like you'll see the photo and a lot of the news is like, oh, beef tallows and everything, and like proteins back on the menu type of stuff. So the protein guidelines did increase pretty significantly. They match, I calculated them for myself. Um, the recommendations are somewhere between like 80 and 100 grams of protein in a day. So probably are actually more in line with how Americans are eating, or how we're working toward eating, kind of with this blood sugar stable approach. So I thought the protein guidelines were probably pretty apt, but there's a lot of emphasis on animal fat. But the guidelines for saturated fat stayed the same. So it's really interesting because the recommendation is consistent that your diet should be, or that your fat intake should have no more than 10% from saturated fat. But like a lot of the messaging has been, eat steak and cook everything in beef tallow. So what's interesting is the guidelines don't actually reflect some of like the sort of the marketing around it. But I do think one of the main takeaways is like really an emphasis on eating whole foods and trying to eat more like real foods, quote unquote. So there are goods and bads of it. Of course, we're going to continue to discover as we kind of engage with this. A couple of the other things that the Academy, I think, thought were maybe not as evidence-based as we'd like guidelines to be, or just that there's not great evidence to support that it's necessary to limit, or that it's health promoting to limit or completely eliminate non-nutritive sweeteners. So the evidence is not there to demonstrate that they're dangerous in any way, though the guidelines now do suggest to really limit something like a sugar-free drink. And then there's strong verbiage in the guidelines now about food dyes that the evidence just does not support, maybe yet or maybe ever. So those are two things I think we're like taking in stride, or taking with a grain of salt, and maybe putting more weight on the positive messaging, which is fantastic, of like lots of vegetables, lots of whole foods, and limiting ultra processed foods, which seem to be really, really closely linked to, just challenges maintaining weight. Yeah.
Thank you for addressing that. I think that's really important that we are up to date on that, especially if our patients and families ask about that. We have a little more information. So truly appreciate that. All right, so we're going to talk about some mindful eating strategies. And
So
one,
first,
oh,
sorry, and I don't mean to, I want
no
you to
problem.
speak to
Go
it, Judy,
ahead.
but I want to kind of describe. So what we're sort of breaking down here would be the different types of eating patterns that are out there. So what would you eat on an eating pattern with a Mind diet or Mediterranean diet? Now I kind of want to speak to how you might eat in an effort to have a healthy diet, or have a healthy experience of eating, no matter which pattern you choose.
Thank you. All right, so a couple of you talked about being really hungry or overeating. And this is a really nice visual because it gives you some guidelines. If you don't pay attention to your body is giving you cues. If you're dehydrated and you're not paying attention to your mouth being dry or that need for water, your body goes on and tells you it's hungry because it's hoping it will get the water or the fluid it needs through food. So maybe if you backed up a little bit and paid attention to this hunger scale, you'd be able to pay attention to what your body's trying to tell you. The idea is to try to stay in between that 4, 5, 6 area when you're eating. So if you think about right now, if you've already eaten your dinner, could you say that you are slightly full or pleasantly full, or maybe even just not hungry, just satisfied? Your belly is happy, and you're right there. Or, if you haven't eaten yet and you're putting that off, are you getting to the point where you're like a number 2? You're very hungry. You're feeling that irritability, that you really have that urge to eat. And a lot of times what happens there is you're so hungry that you're not going to be tolerant for having prepared anything. So you're going to open your refrigerator, and if you've got ingredients versus food, food means you grab it and you can eat it. Ingredients means you have to do something to it. You're going to close that refrigerator, go to the pantry, get the cookies or the chips, right? So you want to think about, could I back that up a little bit and think about, when was I beginning to feel hungry? Could I have noticed that? Could I have started to prepare something to eat or pull out something that I have prepared and be ready to eat that? So some of the things you want to think about is just, something like almonds instead of chips. Could you do that? We're all born with the innate ability to tell when we're hungry and when we're full, but this instinct becomes harder to tap into over time because of external factors. Things like eating with others, distractions during eating, like are you on your phone during eating? Do you have the TV on during eating? Stress can do it. So by introducing this hunger scale, it's really a great way to measure the level of hunger and fullness around your eating time. So kind of pay attention when you go to eat where you are on the hunger scale and see if you can give yourself a number when you do that. You want to start eating when you're at 3 or 4, and when you're at 5 or 6. So try to stay in that green area and see how that feels for you. Right. Another thing to be able to pay attention to is where, again, what your body is telling you, that you do have these cravings, you do have something that is kind of shifting and telling you what's going on. So the hormone leptin and ghrelin are triggering your desire for food. Leptin is a protein that's produced by the adipose tissue, and it regulates your appetite and fat storage. It actually inhibits hunger, and it will tell you when you're full. So that's really something to pay attention to. Your body releases it to maintain a normal weight on a long-term basis, to balance energy expenditures and food intake. Leptin acts mainly on your brainstem and hypothalamus to regulate hunger. Now, on the other hand, ghrelin is a hormone that's produced in the GI tract. It's the hunger hormone. It increases your drive to eat. It signals your brain when your stomach is empty. Short-term appetite control is there, and stress increases your ghrelin. The action is to avoid that yo-yo dieting, follow one of the mentioned plans to be able to limit your processed foods, to include a good sleep hygiene, because that absolutely plays on these hormones and how they work. The sweet spot is 7 hours. Stay hydrated. Again, have that water at your desk, wherever you go, so that you're able to use water throughout the day for hydration. And then again, manage your stress, because that does increase the ghrelin.
Sorry. I just added a couple more hunger hormones on there. There are so many different hormones that play a role in this. And one thing I wanted to highlight is that our satiety hormones actually respond differently to different macronutrients. So it really is pretty fascinating that we might feel full in a different way and for a longer period of time, in part because of which hormones are released, whether we ate protein or fat or carbohydrates. So the main sort of like um, the main objective in learning so much more about our blood sugar stability. I think this is like kind of coming to the collective consciousness of folks, and maybe it's because of what I search all day when I'm working with patients, but I've seen a lot of ads lately for like folks who do not have diabetes but are using a continuous glucose monitor to monitor their blood sugar. And what the ad is kind of like bringing up over and over again is tying how a person feels and their energy in that moment to what's happening with their blood sugar. And I think whether we're wearing a CGM or not, it's an apt comparison that in the moment, this is probably the quickest, the most effective way to impact our energy or how we're going to feel throughout the day. And that is by stabilizing our blood sugar and having a more like stable sort of flow of blood sugar stability throughout the day. The easiest way to illustrate this, I think, as you can see the graph here, is that we have a very, very different blood sugar response when we eat carbohydrates by themselves compared to when we eat them paired with protein or fat or a combination of the two. So and I don't need to, I can show you on this graph, but we all have had the experience of like having a craving for something very sweet, eating a donut or whatever it might be for breakfast, having a blood sugar spike. So maybe we feel, fantastic because it tasted great and because we have, some carbohydrates flowing in our bloodstream. But an hour or two later, we're like hitting rock bottom because we're feeling really hungry, almost shaky. And it's like, well, I ate breakfast already. Why am I, hungry to eat again? It's probably because our blood sugars have crashed, and are kind of bottoming out. We didn't have anything to grip onto to digest more slowly. So we used up the carbohydrates in that food very, very rapidly. If we were to eat something different for breakfast, even if it contained carbohydrates, like, I don't know, eggs on toast or um, oatmeal and chicken sausage, I'm just making it up. We have a very, very different blood sugar response, leading to like a more stable curve and sort of like landing gently at lunch. We're landing in that like, 5 or 6 on the scale of hunger instead of one. We're starving as we've ever been, and feeling terribly. It's really hard, even for well-informed people, even for people with great quote unquote discipline, to make smart eating choices when they're at the 1 or the 2 or when their blood sugar is in the tank like this. So, make effort to make it easier on ourselves and effort to feel better throughout the day, studying, working, being at the hospital, whatever it might be. We really want that like green curve for every meal. And in practice, the way that we do that, whether it is with a DASH diet or a vegetarian diet or a mostly meat diet, whatever it might be, we'll try to pair a combination of these foods to keep our blood sugar stable. Some people I think really like numbers and some specifics, so I tried to provide those here. A pretty great target for protein would be probably somewhere between about 20 to 30 grams of protein, or about 4 ounces, a little bigger than a deck of cards of any type of meat, fish, eggs. Certainly could be tofu, could be another vegetarian source of protein. And then about the same, maybe a little bit less of carbohydrate food. So if my fist is a cup, that usually represents about 30 grams of carbs from, potatoes, beans, corn, 2 tortillas, you name it. And then where we get a little more flexibility and where we can kind of toggle based on your hunger, that you have unlimited serving of vegetables at a meal. There's very, very little blood sugar response. It's one of the reasons the new dietary guidelines, I think, are emphasizing vegetables even over fruit, is that our blood sugar stays more stable with inclusion of these veggies. So for a meal, I'd say fairly straightforward, especially lunch and dinner, always a vegetable protein and a moderate serving of carbohydrates. And then for a snack, I think just like pictures worth 1,000 words, we can see some combination of protein and fiber, typically with each of these kind of meal options. We still want to target both. You're not going to have a 30-gram serving of protein most likely at a snack, and it's just not needed. To get like to bridge you to dinner, for example, is probably the most common time I'm working on that with folks. But we should always have a protein um, or a fiber or both with that meal. So I think you can see some of these combinations here. And the great thing about like understanding sources of carbohydrates is that you might see something on here that you hate. You can mix it out, for a carbohydrate equivalent. So once you understand all the foods that fall under the carbohydrate sort of umbrella, they are entirely interchangeable with each other based on the culture you grew up in, based on your food preferences, based on foods that you eat or don't eat for any particular reason. It's kind of like once we understand a carb is a carb is a carb. So we could do crackers with something totally different than what's depicted here. Mix and match. Another, I think it came up even in like our smaller group tonight, another just very, very common, I would call it a barrier, right? It's something that keeps us from healthy eating is, of course, the cost of groceries. There's a time cost involved as well, but I'll kind of speak to just like the financial burden of buying each of these different elements if I could. So first want to speak to like affording protein and making sure that it is included with a meal. This is the most expensive component of our grocery bill typically. So I always try to highlight with folks like when people are experiencing a downturn, it's toward the end of the month. There are many different reasons why they might need to cut back. Safe bets for protein tend to be rotisserie chicken, canned tuna, low sugar Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, eggs. So for the most part, it is not always meat, to be honest. So that's where I think, again, knowing the different equivalents and that it's perfectly fine to eat cottage cheese as a protein source, even if it's dinner, it may not be ideal, but pretty much any canned fish is going to work wonderfully here too. So a lot of folks I work with will have like salmon croquettes or they'll make a fabulous tuna salad and it works really, really nicely for our purposes in meeting protein needs. And then when you can, a lot of grocery stores, I'm sure people are noticing this, a lot of grocery stores have switched to like an app. An app is the only way to access their best prices. So I have, to be honest, I don't have a great suggestion for a way around it except to like engage with it and really get to know different apps to get the best deals. Like I'll go to Jewel and my normal total will be $30 more than when I, take the time to plug in coupons. So I've actually found that to be really well worth the time to learn each individual system, as frustrating as it is. And then I always think it is worthwhile to, or it's been, budget friendly and worthwhile to buy protein in bulk, especially when that protein goes on sale. If you have a little freezer space, this lasts months and months and months. So um, frozen is just as fantastic as fresh. For carbohydrates, I think um, most of us are well aware that we're like drowning in carb foods. You throw a stone, you hit 100 of them. It's typically not a food that's particularly hard to afford compared to other macronutrients. So what I want to highlight here is just higher quality carbohydrate foods that still will like stretch really nicely compared to the cheap stuff like, chips or gas station sweets, which of course are high in carbohydrates, but are not going to be as blood sugar friendly as some of these really nice complex ones. So love options for dried or canned beans, dried or canned lentils, chickpeas. I think the distinction I'm making here is that I'll consider them to still be a carbohydrate food. So a lot of times in like a budget conversation, folks will swap these for a protein. They certainly have protein. And if you follow like a vegetarian or a vegan diet, this is a wonderful source of protein. But because you need to eat it at volume to like meet a certain satiety, I usually like to place it in like the 1 cup sort of carbohydrate conversation. But they will, because they're so high in fiber, they're going to lead to such a nice, steady blood sugar response. So canned and dried are our best friends here. And then for fruit, like always try to buy in season. That's I think where I've gotten the best deals, especially at Jewel with their app, is that a lot of their like berries that normally I think are really tough for most of us to like afford and fit in our budget. They'll be like 99 cents and you can buy five of them. So it has been surprising to me, and worthwhile as well. Fruit of any kind, is just as nutritious. It is literally identical frozen as fresh. Maybe the taste is a little bit different. That's the one thing that seems to be, to show up a little bit differently, but it is, I think, very well worth our while to keep frozen fruit stocked and on hand. Lastly, so I won't speak to fat as much just because that's kind of more of like a pantry staple for most of us, which would be like oil, or butter. But for veggies, it's kind of like our other component of the plate, the one that we're ideally eating the most of, and sometimes it just can get quite pricey. I want to point out some budget-friendly options and especially some convenience options because, just as Judy said, I think it's the experience we've all had where it's like you have a massive head of cabbage in your fridge and it just like looks at you every time you open the door and nothing ever comes of it because kind of like taking that step after a long, exhausting day, is just maybe not going to happen for a lot of us. So can we let the grocery store do a little bit of the processing for us? And I'm saying that a little tongue in cheek just because, like processed foods have long been in the news as something that is so like so terrible for us and something that we really should avoid. And ultra processed, I couldn't agree more. It's just a really, really hard food for most of us to regulate. But technically, like shredded cabbage or frozen cut broccoli or riced cauliflower, we can see here that is like sort of the happy side of processing that, um, just gives us a shortcut in the kitchen. Probably my favorite example of this that's just like this one's not as budget friendly, but certainly is like so convenience friendly and definitely budget friendly compared to like stopping in a fast food place and getting a salad, which usually just so expensive I couldn't even bother. Would be use of salad kits that like you know, tear it open, shake it up, and the whole vegetable component of the meal is completely taken care of. So I just feel like that's a really nicely emerged option for vegetables these days that even like 5 or 10 years ago, there weren't nearly as many options. So it's a really, really fun way to like every time you grocery shop, if you have a couple salad kits in the fridge, it feels like the lightest lift compared to many of the other vegetables, even that are partially prepped for us. And I want to speak to a couple different ingredient swaps that are fairly cost similar in some regards, but because we've emphasized the Mind diet, we and have emphasized it at Rush, and I think developed it at Rush, isn't that right,
Yes.
Judy? So I've previously done some ingredient swaps just for like blood sugar stability, but wanted to talk to a couple that are like would be promoting brain health. So not just to think, all right, blood sugar stability, we got the concept down. So now kind of thinking of like even this additional sort of nutrient density and diet quality. So a couple quick swaps we might think about. So, I've talked about, berries until I'm blue in the face already tonight, but there does seem to be a really, really significant benefit to making this swap, even just occasionally. And you can see like frozen berries would be a great example of how we might access them throughout the year. They're quite a bit richer in antioxidants, so we can see that compared to like sort of more classic staples like bananas or apples, nothing wrong with those. It's just like this type of swap is going to provide more nutrient density, and the nutrients are antioxidants, which are fantastic for our brain health. Some people even notice like truly noticeable anti-inflammatory effects. They're noticing less swelling in their joints. They're noticing, less chronic pain when they're including very nutrient rich, like antioxidant and flavonoid foods. This would be a blood sugar stable balance. There's quite a bit less carbohydrate in berries compared to really most other fruits, and they're very high in fiber. So this is like, I like roll my eyes a little bit when people talk about like superfoods just because I think it's sort of overhyped, but genuinely, if someone is having bowel inconsistencies, if they're constipated, if they're having a hard time staying regular, 1 cup of blackberries or raspberries will change your fiber intake, and oftentimes it doubles it for folks. It's about 8 grams of fiber in a cup of both of those types of berries. So it's just a really, really beneficial swap if we can make it work. Another one that's kind of like hot in the news, I just think a lot of people are eating tinned fish in general. It's kind of like trending this year. But making the swap of sardines in place of tuna for your quick snack or for your protein at a meal, similarly budget friendly. So I am loving that maybe the fancy sardines are, having their moment, but normal canned sardines really are still quite affordable and awesome, awesome protein budget friendly option, but they're much higher in omega-3s, so like a really healthy fat that helps our brains. They're higher in calcium too. As wild as this is, because they're often canned with some bones, when we eat the teeny tiny bones in sardines, it's a great calcium source, just like we store calcium in our bones. And then great source of vitamin D, several other nutrients, and just like kind of in the eating of it, sort of the preparation technique of sardines for a lot of folks that I work with is that they eat them with hot sauce and crackers. So just like a lower fat, lower calorie option than like the more kind of typical tuna salad. So I thought it was a creative way to prepare. This one is not my budget friendliest recommendation, but sort of like a swap that I've made other budget swaps elsewhere that I felt that this one has been so very beneficial, especially in terms of taste, but in particular, the nutrient density of pasture raised eggs. So kind of like the bougier eggs that you can see at the grocery store, probably they're more like $6 or $7 per carton, compared to like $2 or $3 that I'm still seeing for like your kind of classic, Jewel Osco eggs, whatever it might be. It is really remarkable the difference in yolk color, which speaks to the vitamin D content, the vitamin A content, absolutely, and the choline content. So this is a nutrient. It's really, really beneficial for folks who are pregnant. But even as we age, it can reduce the risk of organ dysfunction. I think it's absolutely fascinating. So no matter if you're getting the best eggs you can afford is usually how I'll frame it, even if it is this like mass produced factory farm, still a better option to eat the yolk compared to an egg white by itself. So sort of my plug here is for whole eggs instead of egg whites because of the nutrient density of yolks, and then the best egg you can afford to get as much of the like a nutrient dense egg yolk as possible. Another, just like one more recipe, I think that gives us a great option for something you can make once a week, and reduce your intake of ultra processed foods, even though I think there are some pretty good protein bars out there, like in terms of their macronutrient um, like profile. There's still very much an ultra processed food. So this protein bar substitute, I think, is a really, really fantastic homemade version that will be way more nutrient dense, really, really tasty, much higher in fiber, and doesn't really have any like artificial sweeteners or much artificial in it at all. So you can see this protein bar substitute here. Essentially, the gist of it is that it has a date base, so it's really tasty and sweet, nice and chewy. And you can kind of customize it with peanut butter, cocoa powder, some, cocoa nibs, whatever it might be. A couple other swaps that I guess I won't speak to for brain health, but because I work in weight management and it is very commonly just like a topic of concern for folks. If anybody is here tonight because they're hoping to set a goal or make a change, there probably is not a more powerful one than swapping out drinks that have sugar with something that is unsweetened. So, bubbly water for soda is sort of like one example or one iteration of this. And I just think it's very, very powerful. If we think about that spike and crash graph, that is unfortunately what happens every time we drink a pop. It's you can't eat it with a balance. Like there's not a balanced enough meal out there under the sun to help our bodies to like have a beautiful, nice blood sugar graph if we're drinking those types of drinks. Even if you're sipping it throughout the day, it's causing blood sugar disturbances, unfortunately. So that's a negative way of putting it. What's the most amazing positive way of thinking about this? If we were to stop these drinks, like better energy and so much benefit is on the other side of what I think is a really, really tough change. But get off the blood sugar roller coaster is sort of my message with making that awesome swap. And it's a great time to do it just because there's so many different, soda substitutes or unsweetened or sugar-free sweetened options out there. And then the last plug would just be like, if you're not ready to go fully unsweetened yet, again, there are sugar-free options that are, they are absolutely advantageous for our blood sugar, even if they might. So the biggest risk I think with sweeteners is that if we drink sweet stuff all day, even if it's sugar-free, it can impact our appetite, it can impact our preferences and our cravings. So it's not a guarantee that switching from regular pop to diet like banishes all cravings, for example, or we never want sweets again, but it absolutely will have a favorable blood sugar response. So a better option than like regular sugar, honey, agave, any drinks that cause that blood sugar, or any additions, excuse me, that cause that blood sugar spike.
So thinking about what you have available at Rush, which would be your second thing if you hadn't already prepared it at home and brought it in with you, that there's a lot of different options that you can utilize. And one of the best things you can do is look at the cafeteria. Actually, stand back and look at how it's set up. It's called Fuda. That's not an acronym, that's what it's called. And it's a company that brings in local vendors, which I think is amazing because you get a little taste of a lot of a wider variety of foods than if it was just straight cafeteria types food. So kind of look through what they have to offer there. Panera is there. It is expensive, but it is your 24/7 option. There are roving food carts from Room 500 to go. You can actually order ahead and go pick up your food from Room 500, or you can visit one of the roving food carts that go onto the units. They're in the hallway on the fourth floor. They're over in Rob. So during meal hours, you'll see those food carts kind of settle into a spot and then move a little bit as the hour goes by. There are vending machines. One of them is a color-coded snack machine. You see that over in the college. It was actually developed by a medical student who identified that maybe if you had a little help about when you were about to make a choice, you might make a healthier choice. So there are foods that are listed under green, under yellow, and under red. Red meaning try not to eat these. Yellow, okay, maybe occasionally. And green, if you're going to snack, maybe this is the line that you try to choose from. Farmer's Fridge is really quite impressive if you've ever used one of their salads and you open up that jar and you think, oh, this is so expensive for just this jar. And when you open it up, it gives you a full plate of very healthy and well-balanced proteins and carbohydrates. And so it's really something to look into, especially if you haven't done this yourself. Save that container and try to do that yourself then the night before and see how that works for you. There's also the Subway over in the Ortho building. That's another option for you. All right, so let's think about this. Like, what if you were faced with food insecurity, that you were dealing with your tuition and your transportation and your food and your rent? The idea of being food insecure could happen. And so just to know the fact that there are depositories here in Chicago, there's actually 10 food depositories in Illinois, and they dispense food to agencies, which are the food pantries. Food pantries actually buy the food, but at a very reduced price. And the agencies agree to follow federal guidelines used by the food depository. There's about 580 pantries in Chicago. And so just knowing about this is important. There's one, Our Lady of Holy Family on Flournoy, the Pilgrim's Rest on Washington, Pilson's Food Pantry, St. Agatha's Food Pantry, Miralac House. There's definitely ideas and options if this is something that your client or your family needs or yourself. And the idea of it is that you can take advantage of this. If you are a student, make sure you bring your ID because some of the pantries actually ask for IDs so that they limit how many times you come in a week. Students can use the UIC pop-up pantry. So again, just ideas if this were to come up. Or a friend was in a situation where there was some need for some assistance to get them through the week. What about a coach? You can contact Clinical Nutrition, 942 Diet, to make an appointment to see a coach around clinical nutrition. There's a medical weight loss, Department of Surgery, the Rush Fitness Center programs, and the Center for Clinical Wellness, just talking through some of your planning. Sometimes it has to do with procrastination or perfectionism type of things that are actually holding you back from being able to pre-plan and prepare your food. So there might be some other component to the fact around good nutrition. All right, and in the last couple moments, what I want to do is share with you some of the resources. Somebody asked in the chat what the wellness centers, how to get to it. So it's just Inside Rush/wellness. You'd be able to get there. The physical space is in the Triangle Building on the first floor. So it's a 7-minute walk across the expressway if you're at the hospital. Inside, it is built beautifully for calmness. It's kind of spa-like. It's very small, but very mighty. So it's our physical space for wellness. Your appointments can be between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. You can do it in person or virtually at home in your pajamas on your day off. Works well. And then the really important thing to think about for your mental health, there is no fee to access the counselors at the Wellness Center. No fee for students or employees. There's also unlimited sessions. So if you come for something, so maybe you're feeling overwhelmed about something and you felt like you've been successful to kind of work through that, but then something else comes up, something that you're worried about, you can come back and be able to work with a counselor on that same thing. So unlimited free sessions. It's an amazing benefit to have for your mental health. This is the website. If you look across that blue bar at the top, you can see the different components of the wellness website. So you can see the Inside Rush is at the top, then wellness. You're able to schedule your own appointments. You look to see each of the counselors. You can read their bios. You can look at their schedule and be able to make your own appointments, which is wonderful. You can take a look at what the fitness center has to offer. You can look at our wellness programming, any of the things that are coming up. Like Rush of Gratitude is coming up in February. That's a lot of fun to be able to do. And you'll be able to see when those kind of things are. Any of these talks, the Are You Well talks, are all recorded and posted on the website as well, so you're able to go back and take a look at it. What I've been talking to you about is the options on the left-hand side, 7 to 7, Monday through Friday, online scheduling, unlimited free session to the Rush community. On the right side, if you choose not to use a Rush provider, you can work with our EAP partner, which is open 24/7, telehealth and in person. The phone number is on the screen, but it is also on our website, so you're able to access it there. They offer 8 free sessions, so there is a limit. What's unique about this is that it's available to your immediate family and significant others. So again, a really amazing benefit here at Rush for your mental health. The Center for Clinical Wellness does have counseling, case management. The Energy Pod is now over in the Rush Fitness Center. You do not need to be a member to use the Energy Pod. It is about a 20-minute guided relaxation where it takes away kind of that sound and the lights, and it kind of puts you in a weightless position, and it's actually a 20-minute cycle. And so schedule yourself for a half hour. Just call ahead, make a reservation for it. There is also a second one for students over on the second floor in the Cultural Center of the academic facility. Again, all these things are free to students, house staff, and employees, and there is no session cap. Another thing I want you to think about is if your struggling with something, if you're challenged by a worry that you have, anxiety that you're feeling, maybe you want to think about contacting the Wellness Triage pager. The number is 852323. And if there's something at 2:30 in the morning and you're like, I can't do this again, I'm not getting any sleep, I'm exhausted, use that pager number because they're available 24/7. One of our psychotherapists will carry this pager 24/7, be able to reach you within an hour after you call and talk to you about what's going on right now and what you need in the next couple days. So it's definitely a really great resource. Don't second guess yourself. Make the call and be able to talk through what you have on your mind. Another thing you might have on your mind is Murray, our therapy dog. So Murray, you may have seen him already at a lot of the university activities. He's available to visit the departments and student groups and activities. He is actually on the counselor site, so when you go to make an appointment, he's one of the options on there. And he only serves students and staff. There's a different therapy dog that goes for patients and families. So Murray is ours, and he's turning 3. So if you want to join in the birthday party, it's on the 28th for 1 hour. The humans who show up, there's about 100 cupcakes going to be there. So show up early and say happy birthday to Murray. All right, our wellness programming, we do have mental health first aid that we teach. The Wellness Center does pay the cost of that registration. We offer it once a month. It's usually a Saturday. It can be in person or virtual that you can take it, and it takes about 8 hours. It is a certification course. It's kind of like CPR for your mental health. It's actually really good to know some of the signs and the symptoms of that high anxiety, the panic kind of feeling, what to do about it, what your resources are. Anchored is our safe space. It's our support group in person and online for both students. There's one for students and one for employees. So again, you can register by using the QR code or going on the website. You register for it, and then you have the weekly meetings. We have peer supporters who have completed the mental health first aid, and they've offered to talk for a half hour to anyone that's feeling a little bit challenged by what's going on in their day. And so you can use the QR code again or go on the website and be able to have that free confidential 30-minute meeting to be able to talk with one of your peers about how things are going at Rush. Our fitness center is beautiful. If you've never been there, at least do yourself a favor and ask to go over there and take a tour of it. It's really nice. Students have free membership, okay? Free membership for students. For staff, the rate is $30 a month. Comes right out of your paycheck. The hours are wonderful from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. It also has a lot of virtual classes. So if you're not on campus every day, you can take advantage of the virtual classes. We do have a mindfulness app. It's called CoaCare 360. The QR code is on the screen. You do have to sign in and create an EAP account, and this will allow you to access the app. And again, another really nice perk to this is it gives you free access for your family members as well. Right, every time we do these talks, we take a look at the pillars of wellness. So we talked about healthy nutrition, and hopefully some of those things will help you with your physical activity and your sleep and your stress management. Just to wrap up, want to make sure that you can pay attention to what's available here at Rush, what your benefits are. You know, one of the things we talked about is coaching, so dietitian, clinical nutrition, but maybe 3 things you want to think about that you could try to put in place tonight or tomorrow. Do one thing that's non-negotiable. So maybe you up your amount of water that you drink. Maybe you switch out one of the things that Molly had talked about. Think about the days when you're overwhelmed, you don't have time, and so do you have something prepared in the freezer or in the cabinet that you would be able to eat and it would be a healthy option? And then give yourself grace. Think about what is realistic for today, what you can afford, what time you have available for you, what you're able to do. Make sure that you think about yourself with that. Excuse me. And I really believe that you can do a lot for your diet by just eliminating the foods that have mascots. So Molly is still here, so if anybody has any questions, to be able to ask anything that you have for her. or use the QR code to give us some ideas of how you think things went today. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording, and if you have any questions, please unmute.
Judy, will you remind us where's the recording available? How do you find those?
The recordings are on the wellness website.
Okay,
So you actually go, there's wellness talks, and you'll see Are You Well as one of the options.
thanks.
So I did have a question.